Let me do a Jean-Claude Van Damme warm-up.
Yeah.
Troopers, I just received the orders. Bison is getting paid out for his crimes. And our friends will have died here. Will have died here for nothing. But we can go home.
Welcome, everyone, to the Over Under Movies podcast, where we take a prominent figure or franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask the simple question, are they overrated or are they underrated?
Or are they properly rated?
We don't do that.
Whoa,
I
buddy.
think once in this entire stretch of episodes we've recorded, we've given the rating properly rated. I can't even remember what it was for.
I feel like there's a lot of media that is just like, this is rated. This is, average.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make for interesting podcasts.
Right.
But I don't think we're going to run into that problem today, because today we are talking about the classic 1994 action film Street Fighter.
And we have a special guest on the pod.
And we have a special guest who brought us this film. This is Shane Emery. Shane is a screenwriter, an editor, and an all-around film aficionado. Shane, how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Shane. Like as you said, I do some screenwriting. I do some filmmaking. I've done 2 short films at this point in my career. You can find them on the YouTubes. And I'm currently writing a feature film. But yeah, as Jason said, I like to think of myself as a little bit of a film buff, and I love bad movies. But this movie that we're going to talk about, I think, is a cult comedy action classic, underrated, and we need to give it the respect it deserves.
Sure. So this is Street Fighter. It's based on the video game series Street Fighter.
Wow.
Yeah, Capcom fighting game. One of the most well-known video games of all time, I would say. This was written and directed by Stephen E. D'Souza. This is his only theatrical directed film, I believe. He started and stopped here.
Listen, when you make perfection, you got to know when to stop.
Once you've climbed Everest,
There's nowhere else to go.
Right.
So this is just an action movie from the 90s, and you can really tell. It stars Jean-Claude Van Damme in the lead role of Guile, who is a street fighter.
Wow.
Well, what's funny is that Guile is not canonically he's not a street fighter. He's like a military guy.
Well, they're all street fighters.
Right. They do fight on the street.
Does this movie have a single actual fight on the street at any point?
They chase Chun-Li through the streets.
Yeah.
There's a street chase.
They have like a cage match,
Which I guess is not on the street.
But yeah, that's not really on the street.
So maybe not. We just watched it last night. I could not really tell you a scene that was a street fight.
This movie also has Ming-Na Wen in it, who, I mean, every like nerd person knows who Ming-Na Wen is at this point, because she's in Marvel and DC
Star
and all
Wars.
that stuff.
She's
Star Wars.
Disney. Mulan.
Yep.
Yeah, and she's Mulan. She's also way too good for this movie, and it's almost like jarring when you see her versus like the rest of this movie. And it's like, what is she doing in this? I guess she was like really young. I have no idea how old she was in this.
There's a few actors in this. Like maybe a little too good for it.
Yeah,
the other one is
including Raul Julia, who plays M. Bison. So Raul Julia mostly did like Shakespearean theater acting for most of his career in the 90s, and now he kind of is famous for this role and for playing Gomez Addams in the Addams Family films. So he kind of came up from this very serious, dramatic career and kind of ended his career with these really hammy roles where he just got to have a lot of fun. So.
I do think he's a very we can get into more of this, but like a very talented comedic actor. He just has like an energy and like a good comedic timing, like to some of his deliveries, and we'll go more into that. Yeah.
Sure. So the gist of this film is that M. Bison, played by Raul Julia, is a terrorist who's just taken over the country of Shadaloo. And the United Nations, in this movie called the Allied Nations, because the UN sent lawyers to this production and said, you can't use our name in your movie. So the Allied Nations are trying to stop M. Bison from creating a new dictatorship. So they send in their armed forces, including Guile, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme.
The American Guile.
Yeah, he not only does he have an American patch on his uniform, he also has a U.S. flag tattoo on his arm later in the film when he goes shirtless.
Just to show how American he is, and he is famously played by a very Belgian man with a thick accent.
This is a very poor attempt at... I don't even know if he's going for an accent or if they were just like, buddy, just talk how you talk. It doesn't matter.
So the thing about Jean-Claude Van Damme in this movie is, according to the director, he was like coked out of his mind the whole production.
That's not surprising.
And apparently, like it was just like he would refuse to come out of his trailer, and you can just kind of tell when he was on set, it was like, we're getting one take with John today. Like, every line read he does is, again, just like the first take, and this is the best we're getting out of him.
Yeah, Jean-Claude Van Damme showed up. They shot this in Thailand, so he showed up to Thailand to do cocaine, have an affair, and visit Thailand, and that's what he did.
Do the other things you do when you go to Thailand,
and make like millions of dollars starring in this video game adaptation.
Yeah, so I do have the number that he made. I have the full budget, and I know how much he made. So I'll just tell you the budget is $35 million. What percentage of that $35 million do you think went to Jean-Claude Van Damme?
is it written as a percentage or is it written as
It's
like
a number. I'm going to do math in my head. Just kidding. Just give me a number.
I'm gonna guess like $5 million.
I'm gonna say $5 million too.
He made $7 million. It's a significant amount of money.
It's a decent chunk.
That'll buy you so much cocaine.
Which is interesting. Which is interesting because I'm guessing like when this movie was marketed, because this movie came out when we were like toddlers, so
Yeah.
like we didn't watch. I'm guessing both of you guys watched this movie when you were younger for the first
I watched
time,
it
right?
when I was a kid, yep.
So I first heard about it infamously, like Nostalgia Critic did like a review on it. So that's how I was discovered this movie, and then it became like, so this was in high school, and then it became one of like me and my friends like go to like just put on a fun cheesy movie. My friends and I, like, we can quote so much of this movie. So it's like one of our regular, like, in our rotation movies.
Okay, so it's like a different level of nostalgia. It's like a nostalgia from like early adulthood.
Yeah, and it means something for you and your friends, so it's like special to you in that way.
Yeah, because this movie, I'm guessing, was marketed mainly as a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Yeah.
But like, this movie is an ensemble piece, and which makes sense. It's a Street Fighter adaptation. Street Fighter is a fighting series that has like a whole cast of characters. It has so many characters that, like, I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know shit about this franchise. So when I had to like look up like who are the main characters of this game, I got so many different answers when I was trying to like research this. I was like, no, who are these people supposed to be? And like eventually I was able to track down like, okay, this is who all these characters are supposed to be. It's cool that like it seems like they implemented about like a dozen or so like actual fighters from the game
They
at
got
certain points in this movie.
I believe the Street Fighter 2 roster has 16 characters, 16 or 15, and they got 14 or 15 of those characters written into this film. So basically every character that's on the roster of that game, Street Fighter 2 is the most famous one, is in this movie in some shape or form.
So I was gonna say, so you've not played any of the Street Fighter games, like, so you don't have a lot of familiarity.
No, I'm more of a Mortal Kombat guy or Smash Bros guy.
And then Jason, are you also just like not a?
I'm a Mortal Kombat guy. I played Marvel Superhero versus Street Fighter. I played X-Men versus Street Fighter. So I'm familiar with the cast of that game through that more than this movie even.
Yeah, which makes it interesting because I feel like the cast of the Street Fighter games is a little less iconic than some of those other fighting franchises. I know the most recent Street Fighter game is built around like a make your own character type of thing, and then everybody's just their own character, and then you interact with these other Street Fighters like throughout the campaign of that. So it's interesting that they can kind of like just mold whatever story they want out of this. But this movie, it kind of sits in a very interesting place in time when it comes to video game adaptations. This movie came out in 94?
94.
Yep.
94, and then Super Mario Bros. Came out in 1993, and then the Paul W.S. Anderson Mortal Kombat film came out in 95.
Yeah.
So this is when they were doing those weird 90s video game adaptations.
Right. It felt like kind of like a gold rush thing of like video games are really popular right now with the kiddos. We got to just get movies out based on them. And since like they're obviously made by like older filmmakers, not like kids, you can kind of tell that like these filmmakers are just like, I don't know, there's fucking street fighting, you know, the Mario guys, they're plumbers, and like I guess they fight dinosaurs, like.
Which is funny because yeah, you mentioned that this director, he had only directed this movie. He was mostly a screenwriter throughout his career.
Yes.
Do you have like the movies that he wrote in front of you? I know he did Commando. He did Die Hard. He did Beverly Hills Cop 3.
He did Die Harder. So he did some of the most like iconic 80s and 90s action movies as far as the screenplays go.
Yeah, definitely not lightweight.
Yeah, but then he tried his hand at directing one and it didn't go well. Or you could argue that it went well. Like, I think generally we had a great time watching this movie, but it was not well received critically, and it didn't make all that much money at the box office.
So here's the question I have for you, Shane. Would you agree that this is like a so bad it's good type movie, or do you actually think that there's like it leans into I actually enjoy this a little bit?
So my thing with this movie is that there comes a point in it where you're watching like the first half of the movie and you're just like, this is so cheesy and like, again, like so bad it's good. And then someone will say like a line that is like, do they know? Like are they in on the joke? So I recently watched this movie in a packed theater in Los Angeles, and I had two of my friends with me who had not seen the movie before. So I was like laughing, the whole crowd was like laughing, having a good time, and then my friend experienced it for the first time. By the end of the movie, because we're allowed to spoil it, right?
Sure.
Spoilers for Street Fighter.
There's like a point in the movie, like at the end of the movie, where Zangief, who's like the big Russian guy, is talking to like one of the other bad guys, and this is after like M. Bison is defeated, and then he just goes like, M. Bison's a bad guy, we need to get out of here. And then Zangief's like, what do you mean? If he's a bad guy, why are you working for him? And he goes, because he paid me a lot of money. Like, camera pushes in on Zangief, and then Zangief goes, you're getting paid? And my friend leaned in and just goes, this was the moment that I knew the movie was in on it. Like they knew they were in on the joke. And that to me is the thing, is that like I do genuinely think this movie is going for a hyper reality comedy action film. I think it's very campy. And again, if that's your thing, I think this is like up your alley. I wouldn't like take it seriously in the way of like a Jason Bourne movie.
Right.
But if you're here to watch like a campy action film, I think this movie delivers on that.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare this to the Mortal Kombat film that comes out a year after that, because that movie takes itself a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
And obviously it's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who goes on to do those, he did Resident Evil, right?
Yeah.
I always get that mixed up, whether he did Resident Evil or if he did Underworld.
Oh, yeah.
Well, some people get him mixed up and think he did Punch Drunk Love, but you know.
Oh, yeah.
No, he
Paul
did-
Thomas Anderson.
He did do
You gotta make that joke.
Yeah, he goes from Mortal Kombat to Mortal Kombat 2 to Event Horizon. But it's a fine line that you need to walk when you're doing this type of film.
Yeah.
Because I know the regular media guys, they talk about this all the time. You cannot do a so bad it's good movie on purpose.
Right.
It has to happen like organically through people watching the movie at home and
Right.
having fun with it. And then eventually you have like what happened with The Room, where like people are in movie theaters like making jokes and like quoting the movie out loud as they're watching it because it's an experience like that.
Yeah.
It's very, very fine line to walk. And I think this movie, at least for me, it almost gets there. It almost gets there by the end of the movie, which is an achievement for me, especially because like I'm a curmudgeon with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a movie that if you're watching it with people like you who are like fucking losing their mind watching it, I definitely think it elevates the watching experience a little bit. It's be a good movie to get drunk. I'm upset that I was sober watching this movie.
Yeah, poor choice. For me, I think this movie, I think the director knew what he was doing. I don't think he set out to make a so bad it's good movie. He just set out to make a funny movie. That's why he wrote so many jokes, and they're good, funny jokes. I think pretty much everyone involved with this was in on the joke except for Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I agree.
And that's where you get that element that Dylan's talking about, where like you can't set out to make a so bad it's good movie. It has to happen organically, and it happens organically with the character of Guile, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Everything else, genuinely funny, like good comedic timing from everyone because they're trying to be funny. And then there's one guy who doesn't know that he's the joke.
Oh, that's the thing is, again, like I think that he's taking the movie pretty seriously. He almost has like you said, like we were saying in the room, like an almost Tommy Wiseau level of like
It's comparable accent.
like the accent and just like the line read of like, what was the choice there? Like, what was the vision?
I do think that Ming-Na Wen is taking this seriously also.
Mm.
I feel like she thinks that she is in a serious movie, or at least like she's such a good actress that she doesn't have like an off switch.
Yeah.
So there's like that one scene where she gets captured by Bison and she's going into this like long expository dialogue of her like origin story of Bison's men like invading her home village and her father like fighting them off. And it's so serious. It's a complete tone shift from the rest of the movie.
So what I love about that, and again, I think it's like brilliant comedy because like you have again like Chung-Li who is giving like this very serious monologue, and Lisa like she's doing a very good job.
Yeah, she's going for it.
And then it just cuts to like M. Bison, and he says the hardest line in the movie, and I'm gonna say top 5, lines in action movies. He goes, "I don't remember that," and then she goes, "What? You don't remember like killing my father?" And he goes, "The day the great M. Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life, but for me, it was Tuesday."
What a banger.
It's so good, yeah.
And that line, my friend, again, when I was in the theater, my friend, he's a big Street Fighter fan, just played like all the video games. He didn't know that line was from the movie because he's never seen it before. That line is like apparently Bison's go-to line in the video games ever since the movie. It's just, again, it's hard. It's such a good villain line.
Yeah, that's interesting because this movie did not get a sequel. It made decent money too, which I'm surprised it didn't get a sequel.
It made $100 million off of a $35 million budget. It was slated for a sequel at certain points. The actor who played M. Bison passed away. He's like the main villain of the series, so it's really hard to do it without him. It got greenlit like again officially in 2003. And then by that point, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, they did do like another live action Street Fighter movie in theaters. It was like called like The Legend of Chung-Li.
Yeah, it's more focused on the character of Chun-Li, played by Kristen Cruick, who was in Smallville.
Yeah.
Is that the one that was part of a sex cult?
No, that's a different person.
Is a different person from Smallville?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
I thought that was Riverdale had the sex cult. Like,
No. There was an actress from Smallville who.
Oh right.
What do you think's a worse fate? Starring in Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, or joining a sex cult?
Oh man.
I don't know. Sex cult. At least you have sex.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Had sex.
We're gonna cut this.
That one's going on the TikTok.
Yeah. So I forgot what we were talking about. So here's a fun fact. M. Bison, the villain of the series, he's not known as Bison in the Japanese versions of the game. His character's name is Vega, who, if you remember in this movie, Vega is the cage fighter with the claw. There's another character named Balrog, who's a boxer. So what happened was Balrog, M. Bison, and Vega all had to switch names because M. Bison was originally the name of the boxer, and he was just named Mike Bison after Mike Tyson. And Capcom, when they ported the game, they were like,
incredible.
We don't want that smoke. We're not getting sued by Mike Tyson. Switch these 3 guys' names around.
They're like, we don't mess with the UN and we don't mess with Mike Tyson.
Well, it's because he already had like a video game because he was in Punch Out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Mike Tyson Punch-Out game is no longer called Mike Tyson's Punch-Out because that like the rights to that expired, so they can't even call it Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. They just call it Punch-Out now.
Yeah. We sure know a lot about video games.
Well, so another fun fact. What's funny about talking about the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie and Jean-Claude Van Damme being in Street Fighter. So you guys have both played Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So Jean-Claude Van Damme was the basis for Johnny Cage because apparently Mortal Kombat was supposed to be like a Jean-Claude Van Damme video game.
Yeah, it was going to be based off his movie Bloodsport, I think. And then they didn't get the rights to that or him. So they just made a completely different game.
Which is just kind of funny that like Jean-Claude Van Damme goes on to play like Guile in Street Fighter, but apparently in the new Mortal Kombat game, Jean-Claude Van Damme is officially playing Johnny Cage now. So again,
he's a skin for Johnny Cage.
It all comes back around.
Yeah, full circle.
I'm curious, what do you guys think makes a good video game adaptation? Video game film adaptations have had a rocky road, to say the least. I think that they've gotten better they've gotten better recently.
Yeah.
With some of them, and some of them are, better on TV than they are on film, right? I mean, we had the Last of Us series that came out last year that was very successful. Especially in this time now where so many video games, a lot of the big video games are so narrative driven, you think it would be easier to adapt them into movies and TV. But it's interesting, if you look at the 90s stuff, like the Super Mario Brothers movie is nothing like Super Mario Brothers.
Right.
It just has the character names and that's it, which that movie is so interesting to look at now. It's like, how the hell does Nintendo let that happen even a little bit? You look at the Super Mario Brothers movie that came out this year, and it's like, well, it's pretty safe, but at least it works. Like, that's how you make $1 billion with a giant video game franchise like that.
I almost feel like the new Super Mario Brothers movie almost like plays it too safe to an extent, where like when I walked out of it, I was like, that was Mario.
Yeah, it was a Mario movie.
Because I feel like that's the thing right now with a lot of video game movies. I feel like they're like bunts, where it's like they're getting on base, but I'm trying to think if we've had like a home run yet, like in the way of like with comic book movies where they had such a hard time like finding the right sauce, like the formula, and then the Dark Knight comes out and or like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and everyone's just like that's it.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. I'm trying to think if we've had that yet with video games.
I mean, that is a good comparison because for the longest time, superhero movies were thought of in the same realm. Like, you can't do very high-level versions of this content.
Yeah.
You're always stuck with, like, the more, silly comedic side of things. But if you ever try to get, like, serious with it, like, nobody's ever going to actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
And now we know that, obviously, you could do whatever type of movie you want to with a superhero backdrop, but it seems like, studios are still having a lot of trouble with the video game side of things. I mean, I think of the Michael Fassbender Assassin's Creed movie that came out a few years ago, and it's like, it's horrible. It's so bad. And the Assassin's Creed games have tons of really cool lore and stories that you can pull from. It's a really big franchise at this point, and they just fucking fell on their face with it. It's crazy.
I feel like that, again, like you said, like that should have been a slam dunk. I think the way to do it is, like, again, like I think Assassin's Creed has such a cool series and lore, and I thought they had the right idea where they're not doing like a direct adaptation of like the game's stories, but they're setting it in that universe. And I was just like, how do you fumble that? Like, you have a cool premise and a cool universe, and just write a good story around it.
I mean, if you're adapting a game that has a narrative that people enjoy, just adapt the story. Like, don't fucking get cute with it. Like, if they did like a Red Dead Redemption 2 movie, like, just do the plot of Red Dead Redemption 2 and people will love it because people love the plot of the game.
I don't know. It's like, I think even that's still kind of a bunt. I think you have to like do something special. Like, comic book movies are almost never one-to-one adaptations of a comic book, even like the greatest runs of all time. Every Batman movie, the director comes out and he's like, yeah, my main inspirations are The Long Halloween and The Dark Knight Returns. But no one's ever just adapting those stories into film. So I do think there needs to be some shifting away. Like you pointed out that probably the highest critical success video game project is The Last of Us. I was not very interested in that. I was like, I would rather just play the game because it's such a one-to-one adaptation. It's a little bit boring. Whereas I found this movie to be very compelling and fun. So,
I did think of what I do think is actually like the home run of video game movies, and that was Arcane. Did you guys see that?
I didn't watch it.
You haven't seen Arcane? That's surprising because you're the anime guy between us.
I guess it's French. It's not anime. It's a French studio. I mean, well, we don't need to. I might get smoked for.
I don't watch a lot of TV in general. I'm a busy person.
But yeah, so that's the one that's based on League of Legends.
League of Legends.
No, I
Well, yeah, you're right that like animated adaptations tend to do well. I know that the Cyberpunk Edge Runners series also, people love that a lot.
And neither of those are direct adaptations of their properties either.
Yeah, they just exist in the
See,
universe.
well, I was thinking, so I don't know shit about League of Legends. Like, I know there's like kind of an RTS element of it, and there's like a billion characters, and the main one is Harley Quinn with blue hair.
Okay.
Like that's
Not
the one
really
everyone
the
like.
main one, but yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Easiest cosplay, fun character.
I know a lot of women who cosplay as her.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Is like, but I don't know anything about the lore. I don't really know anything about these characters. And I watched the show and was like, this is so cool. Like I was really into the characters, the story, and the world. And like you said, like it's not a direct adaptation of the video game. And to me, that's what it should be, is like, how do we like take these ideas and these stories and find a way to use the medium of film and television as opposed to like using it as like a hindrance, I feel like. Because The Last of Us show, I thought it was like pretty good, but my complaint about that show, and also with the video game a little bit, is that like the game and the show to an extent use both of their mediums in a weird way, where like The Last of Us sometimes is just an HBO show, like the video game, which made it easier to adapt because there's just scenes that are like, this is...
You just rip it.
Yeah. But then there's like scenes in like the show where the characters are just walking from one point to another. And that works in a video game where you're just walking around.
Yeah, it's like go to the place over there.
Yeah. And in the show, I was just like, this is boring. Like
you gotta have like something for them to do.
Right. And I was just like, why is shot very plainly, and it's just like two characters having the same conversation they've had like 10 times already, and like I'm starting to lose interest. And that's the thing where it feels like they were just like adapted the video game. The best parts of the show were the ones that were like, to me, going beyond that. Like the episode that everyone loves is episode 3, which is the flashback episode with like Nick Offerman, where it takes a character from the video game who you go on like a quest with him in the game, and in that quest you find out that he had a partner who left him because he's like a crazy conspiracy guy. And then the show, instead of adapting that, did a whole prequel episode where it was like him meeting his partner and then their life together, them arguing but them coming back together, and then by the end, like they, instead of him the partner leaving, they die together in like a very beautiful way. And that's when like Joel comes and finds, them, dead. But to me, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, it's just a really cool post-apocalyptic story. And it just took Last of Us and told the story. And I'm like, that's what we need. Not like, again, let's just go on another quest with this guy.
Yeah, and it's also, you're also able to use people's knowledge of the source material as a way to subvert things.
Yeah.
I mean, for The Last of Us, I won't spoil it here, but in the second Last of Us game, there's a very major event that happens early in the game that is insanely polarizing among fans of the series. And people are going to go into season 2 of the television show being like, oh, they're just going to do this 1-to-1 all over again, and they're going to go through the whole arc that the main character goes on after that. But there's a chance that they don't do that.
Yeah.
Could be interesting.
Which, yes, could be very interesting. And that is, that's the balancing act that these studios and these screenwriters have to, they have to work with. I think of something like in the early 2000s, they did Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movies. I think they did 2 of them. And they're kind of silly. They're a little campy. People generally have fairly good memories of them. Like, they're not thought of as horrible. Flashback to more recently, there's been a series of Tomb Raider games that are more serious, and they're well-regarded video games, and then they do a very like almost 1-to-1 adaptation with Alicia Vikander, and the movie flops.
Yeah, I hate
Nobody
that
likes
movie.
it.
Not a
Same
good
thing
movie.
with the Uncharted series.
Right.
People love the Uncharted games. A lot of people think of the Uncharted games as just like visual stories anyway.
Yeah.
Like video games as a story. Anyway. Like there's not a lot of like deep gameplay mechanics in the Uncharted games.
Yeah.
And then they do an Uncharted adaptation with Tom Holland, one of the biggest young stars on the planet. The movie flops.
Right.
Like somehow this is a giant holdup for movie studios. Like they just cannot seem to get it right. And then like is it an issue of tone? Like, is it just better if they try to like lean into the campy, like silly side of video games, or is it just the idea, or is it just that they just haven't gotten it right yet, and they're going to get it right?
Our criteria here for what makes a good video game adaptation is it expands the story. It's not a one-to-one adaptation. It can exist like within that world, but it also subverts the longtime players' expectations in some way. Do you think that Street Fighter, the 1994 film, hits that criteria?
To an extent, yeah. Like, because like, well, one, so like the main character in Street Fighter is typically Ryu. But Ryu is like he's a supporting character in this with like he has like a buddy cop dynamic with Ken. But in this one it's Guile, and again it's like they're just like taking these characters and instead of like doing a tournament or like a street fight, it's just an action movie.
Do the Street Fighter games actually have some sort of like backstory or lore or anything like that? I know like in Mortal Kombat that it's a tournament that they're playing out, and it's literally a tournament like where they're fighting to the death. What is it? Does Street Fighter have any like deeper story to it?
I know that in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, they're trying to get the Infinity Gauntlet.
So will that be in Secret Wars? Are we gonna like see Jean-Claude Van Damme like come out of a portal?
Street Fighter shows up in Secret Wars. I will take back every bad thing I've ever said about Marvel.
Jean-Claude Van Damme takes out like Doctor Doom is about to destroy the world. Jean-Claude Van Damme comes out of a portal with like his comb, and he's like, I heard you need a wake-up call. I know that you see yourself on TV, Doctor Doom. Look at this. and then it cuts, and then we get Avengers X Street Fighter.
Good.
I'd watch it.
But you're right that there's different ways you can like quantify what makes a video game adaptation successful. I mean, you could argue that the Sonic the Hedgehog movies that came out recently are successful, even though they are not good movies, but they make a lot of money.
Yeah. Right. Well, like those movies, I've seen both of them, and they're fine for what they are. I think Ben Schwartz is, he's a good casting as Sonic, and like it does adapt the games well. But again, it's like it's Sonic. There's not much like you can really do with that, at least until we get to Sonic 3, and the movie opens with an 8-year-old girl getting capped. But let's hope that happens next year. Adam Driver for Shadow the Hedgehog. That's my dream cast.
That'd be cool.
I think there's a Minecraft movie that's in development.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
that should be interesting.
Yeah, I like all this talk of these video game movies. I really think the peak was in this era, the 94, 95 Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, where there's elements of them being so bad they're good. There's certainly elements of just the people involved not understanding the source material, but it's fun. Like, I like both of those movies more than I like The Last of Us, more than I like the new Mario movie, but it's something that you can't try to do.
Well, so that's the thing, is that like with the new Mario movie, like it's fine. It works as a Mario movie, but I'm probably never gonna watch it again unless I have to babysit someone's kids.
Yeah.
Whereas like the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins, I would watch the movie right now and have a great time.
We can do that after this.
We'll watch it. Yeah, put your money where your mouth is.
So that's the thing, is that like even though like again like these movies, they're not like art, they're not like great, but I still have a fun time with them, and like I'd rather see a movie swing for the fences as opposed to like it's fine.
And I think Street Fighter certainly does that. This movie was plagued with problems on set. The whole thing with Jean-Claude Van Damme being on cocaine is just like a small part of that. Like they just could not get things done by their deadlines. Capcom kept sending over changes to the script and change requests. Originally, the director only wanted 7 Street Fighters to be in the movie, and Capcom was like, you know what, why don't we add more? And then Hasbro, who was doing the toy line for this, was like, yeah, why don't you add a couple more?
And why don't you have them like change costumes throughout the movie?
Right.
Which they do. And you can see that like this movie, there's a lot of like elements of it that don't come together, but in a way the whole thing comes together because it's so over the top and kind of a train wreck in spaces where it's just super fun to watch.
I just had this thought about it, and with Jean-Claude Van Damme, about like again how kind of taking the movie, or at the very least, he's taking his ego seriously. It reminds me a little bit of like why I love the Fast and Furious movies, especially when The Rock comes on board, is because when The Rock and Vin Diesel are on screen together, it's peanut butter and jelly, because you have The Rock who knows he's in a bad movie and he is like hamming it up and, you know, just having a good time. And then you have Vin Diesel who thinks he's making art. Like Vin Diesel, when he says he thinks Fast 10 should like win an Oscar, he's not joking. He's not like doing this as a bit. He genuinely believes when like the cars fall, like you jump out of the windows of the skyscrapers, that to him is like,
Yeah, he sees that and he goes, "That's better than Oppenheimer."
right. Like to him, that is like the Mona Lisa. You know,
Yeah.
like this is peak art right now, and you have like one guy taking it so seriously, one guy who is just here for the lulz, and when you get them together, you get magic, and that's why the last Fast and Furious movies have not been as good, because The Rock's not in them anymore, and you just have a guy taking it too seriously. And then The Rock is doing Jungle Cruise,
Yeah,
where
in fairness, the Rock does act like that in some of his projects. He thought that Black Adam was going to completely, you know.
Oh, the hierarchy of power.
Yeah.
The hierarchy of power did change in the DC universe, just not not the way that The Rock thought.
Yeah. The Rock was like, "This is really great, so we can like really build up to our Black Adam versus Superman movie."
Oh,
where
that's
Black Adam comes out on top.
It's just so funny in the hindsight of it, where it's like, why did like no one wanted to? Who wanted to see Black Adam versus Superman?
The Rock.
The Rock, like
It's a one person.
he's got like the one comic where they fought, like, you know, just like framed like somewhere.
Yeah, I do think the Vin Diesel Jean-Claude Van Damme comparison is very apt. I feel like those guys could make a movie together, and they would think they're making the greatest film of all time.
Yeah.
It would be so fun to watch.
Well, again, like I think that was like the fun thing about like these action stars back in the day is like Stallone. I think is also in the camp of like when he makes Rocky, when he makes Rambo, he thinks he is making art. Like I genuinely believe Stallone thinks Rocky IV ended the Cold War, and I believe him. Like, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because both Stallone and Schwarzenegger took a turn like into the 90s where they wanted to be seen as more than just like the big buff action dude. They wanted to show that they had more range. We watched Total Recall, and like Schwarzenegger is great in the movie. Like he's great comedic timing. You haven't seen Demolition Man, right?
Not.
So like Stallone is like hilarious in Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Like those are guys that clearly have acting range. They just, you know, when they were in the 80s and they were like all roided out of their minds, they were like, no, these guys they're action stars. This is what we're gonna cast them as. Van Damme, to me at least, feels like this guy does one thing.
Yeah,
He kicks, he does cocaine, and he does not know how to read his lines. That's Jean-Claude Van
He
Damme.
can do a split, right? He's famous for his splits.
Oh yeah.
That's good. Very flexible man.
Yeah.
But like, well, yeah, to the point, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think is genuinely like a great comedic actor, very underrated. Also, you just had like, I think Arnold, compared to a lot of action stars now, knew how to pick directors. Like he was working with some of the best action directors in the 80s and 90s. Like there's a reason James Cameron worked with him 3 times. Like he knew directors who knew how to utilize him and directors who knew how to utilize him. And I think that's, again, part of the problem, like, with a lot of these action movies now is that since the directors' voices have kind of, like, dissipated in a way, it's, like, almost too many journeymans where these actors just don't have, like, the strong direction that they used to have. And, like, Jason Statham's just playing the same thing over and over again. Vin Diesel's playing this. The Rock's playing the same thing over and over again. And it's stale. It's boring.
Well, the Street Fighter movie, it does bring you back to a time where you could sell a movie almost entirely off the name of the action star.
Yeah.
And that's not really a thing anymore. And it kind of died like once they started doing the Expendables movies. And they're like, look at all these washed old dudes that they're just here for the paycheck. We're going to put them all on screen for like 5 minutes each. You know, have them sit down in a chair if they need to.
Yeah. The Expendables is a movie that's trying to like replicate the tone and humor of this movie, and it just doesn't do that. Like, it's an ensemble cast. They want to be it's so bad it's good, and it's just kind of bad. And they don't really have the chemistry that they need to carry it over the finish line. But this movie, I think, does.
Like I said, by the time you get to the end of this movie and they all like do like their pose in the final shot,
So good.
like again, it's just
It is a bit of a cherry on top. Where
yeah.
you're like, oh, they knew what they were doing.
Where they jump in the air and freeze frame, that's classic. That's art, man.
I think that was just like a rule in the 90s that you had to end every movie like that.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat ends
Yeah.
similarly. All right, so we've talked a lot about this movie. How do you think it's rated? Like, what do you think its cultural footprint looks like? How do you think the general public perceives this
What is?
film?
Do you have like the Rotten Tomatoes in front of you?
No, but I can pull it up.
Here, let's check the.
All right. In the I'm also gonna check Letterboxd.
Yeah, I was about to,
Good
do
idea.
that. The Letterbox Bros. This could go either way.
Oh, you.
Oh my God, the Rotten Tomatoes score is nuts.
Is it like 2%?
It's higher than 2. It's 11%.
Okay.
Wrong.
Crazy.
So it's in Rebel Moon territory.
Yeah.
Oh, Snyder. So Street Fighter on Letterboxd has a 2.1, which is not great.
Honestly, it's higher than I thought it would be.
Again, this is where I say that this is underrated, and I don't think Doug Walker will see heaven's light for making people think that this was a bad movie that was not in on the joke. Because again, it was, Doug. I watched this like in a crowded theater this year, and people were having a great time. And isn't that what a movie's supposed to do? It's supposed to entertain. Like, you know, they were laughing, they were cheering, and I was like, the movie set out its goal. And even if it, you know, again, you could argue if it was intentional or not, people had fun. Like, and like, I don't know if people are gonna have, like, people had fun watching Legend of Chun-Li, you know?
No.
I didn't really have fun watching the new Mortal Kombat movie. Like, that was fine, you know, it was okay.
Yeah, didn't care for that. Didn't care for the new Mario. Like, this movie did something pretty special, I would say. But what, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think it's viewed in general?
I'd say like a 3.
Yeah, I'll go 3.5.
Yeah, I would boost it up to a 4. I would say that obviously critics are giving it like really low scores, but it might be bolstered by the fact that it has that cult following. So we'll say it's a 3.5. One of us should make an argument for why it's overrated. Do you want to do it, Dylan, or should I?
Yeah, sure. I should preface this argument by saying that I have like no strong feelings on this movie. I saw it for the first time last night. However, the argument for this movie being overrated is pretty obvious. That like it's a bad movie, and if you think that it, like if you watch this and you come out of it going like, wow, that was a really bad '90s action movie, then that's it. Like the buck stops there, and you'll look at people like you who are just
What do you mean?
are like losing their mind when they watch this movie, and you go, that's a crazy person. It's like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is a shitty '90s JVD movie where I'm watching a washed up action star coked out of his mind, like spewing off one-liners, and you know, to a certain audience, those one-liners are they're the best one-liners in cinema history.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like this with any so bad it's good movie, is that if it doesn't get over that tipping point of the it's good part of it, then it's just bad. It's just a bad movie, and that's the main argument for it being overrated. I guess the other argument for being overrated is that like this is a franchise that they never came back to. You know, despite the fact that this movie made some money, they didn't make a sequel to it. I mean, the Mortal Kombat movie did get a sequel, and that one did not make a lot of money. The sequel to the Paul W.S. Anderson one, but you think especially like Street Fighter is a huge video game franchise still. I believe it's like bigger than Mortal Kombat right now when it comes to like the competitive scene. So they could absolutely make a Street Fighter movie or a TV show nowadays if they wanted to, but it seems like they're not going back to that well, which is interesting. So it's tough to say. But this movie specifically, I would say, yeah, a little bit overrated would be a totally understandable side of this to fall down on.
Yeah, I would disagree. I don't think this movie is so bad it's good. I think it's just a good movie that happens to have some really...
Let's go all in.
It has some funny elements from like tough parts of the production. There are parts of it that are bad, that are so bad it's good. But overall, I think it's a good movie, right? Like, it tells a story. It gets from point A to point B. It's not like there's loose ends they have to tie up or just dangling plot points. It's a movie about good guys versus bad guys, and they fight in an armed fortress, and the good guys win. It pays off everything it's trying to do, and then it happens to be hilarious because there's some funny lines, and because Jean-Claude Van Damme is coked out of his mind, like you said.
I mean, are you saying this is a good movie because of like how funny it is?
Mostly,
Because
yeah.
I don't know if this is a hot take. This is not a very good action movie in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good overrated.
The fight scenes are fucking awful. The last like 30 minutes of this movie is largely fight scenes, and this movie is cut up like it's Taken 3 or something like that. And you're trying to cut. It's obvious that they're cutting around actors that don't know like fight choreography, and that's something like you look at the Mortal Kombat movie that came out a couple of years ago. Like they cast actors that knew how to fight, so you could do like, hey, let's get some wides because we don't have to worry about cutting every single time there's a punch or a kick landing.
Yeah. So the reason why the fights are so bad in this is because Raul Julia, who played M. Bison, he had cancer at the time. So
Yeah,
when he showed
tough
up,
luck. Tough luck when your main guy's dying of cancer.
He showed up and he was like severely underweight, so they had to like get him back on weight. So they pushed all of his like scenes back in production, and they shot all of the fight sequences first. They brought on a skilled fight choreographer, and this guy got so pissed off at production because they moved his days all the way to the front of production, so he did not have time to choreograph any fights. He had to just tell the actors what to do day of, sometimes minutes before filming. So yeah, the fights in this are not very good, which is unfortunate because
It's a Street Fighter movie.
I do agree that the fights do leave a lot to be desired. Again, especially for a movie called Street Fighter. Like when we watched it last night, the ESRB, like the ESRB, video game movie MVA rating, like it said PG like 13 for like nonstop like martial arts.
nonstop martial arts, violence, and action.
We gotta let the
Never
parents.
seen.
Gotta let the parents know what their kids are about to watch.
Right, and I'm gonna be honest, the martial arts did stop at some point, so like, I was a little disappointed in that.
Because if you're like a general moviegoer in the 90s, say you don't know anything about this video game franchise, and you buy a ticket, the one thing that you're gonna be expecting of this movie is cool fight scenes. Just
Yeah.
give us some cool fight scenes, and you'll be satisfied.
And a street.
And preferably in a street.
Yeah.
But I'll take a cage.
Oh, my other favorite parts about this movie is the fact that like there is no like act one to this movie. It just starts. Like the opening scene of the movie is just a news broadcast where it's like M. Bison has kidnapped 30 hostages and is demanding $1 billion. And then Colonel Guile is going in to stop him. And then like they go a close up of Guile. Meanwhile, like it's cut between like Guile like giving an interview being like, I'm going to kick your ass, Bison. And meanwhile, Bison is literally just snapping people's necks like in his fortress.
He's 1v1ing guys with his overpowered one-hit kill neck snap.
Right. And then like that is how the movie, like again, there is no like there's no warm up, there's no loop. It's just like let's go. Like,
And I gotta be honest with you, like that opening really excited me because in my brain I was like, oh, this movie's not gonna be very plot heavy. It's just gonna have a lot of fighting. That's not what happened.
You really thought nonstop martial arts.
Yeah, this movie has a lot of like twists and turns a bit with the plot because it's an ensemble cast. They're kind of stuck like having to like collect people along the way. I will say, does a far better job at that than Rebel Moon. At least like the ensemble people, like they're revealed as they go to be fighters.
Yeah.
That's always a fun thing when you think a person's just like a cameraman or he's the guy driving the news van. Oh no, that's a boxer and a sumo wrestler.
Sumo wrestling is so good.
Like Chung Lee's like revenge plot is her like becoming a news reporter, like, and that's gonna get her into the country, and so she can kill M. Bison.
It mostly worked.
She got into the country, like, you know, and then she got a private dinner with him and almost kicked him.
Yeah, things happened. Things almost happened.
They sure did. Shane, you're saying this is underrated. Do you have
Yes.
any additional arguments? Anything you want to counter that Dylan said?
I think there's like kind of, we're in a generation that's very irony poisoned. And so I hear a lot of people always like with these movies like the 90s and 80s, they'll be like, oh man, it's like so unintentionally funny. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes I watch these movies, I'm like, I think this is intentionally funny.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what you guys mean when, like unintentionally, like with Commando, as like with which on the same screenwriter. A lot of those scenes, I'm just like, this is clearly funny. Like they knew it was funny on set, and a lot again, this movie, I'm like, this is clearly they knew what they were doing, that they were making something funny, and I'm laughing, and it worked. Like it got me laughing, it got a whole theater of people laughing. So again, it did its job.
Yeah, it's really tricky because sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what they were going for on a film, especially when you get movies like this where there's clearly a lot of camp to it. Another movie that we're definitely going to do on a future episode, because one of my favorite 90s movies is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. Yeah. And that's a movie that I definitely think they're leaning into the camp of it and they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's possible they didn't. It's possible that they're trying to be serious and it's just hilarious because it's so like awfully done.
I think the example is like the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, where again it's like people are just like, man, like how do they not know this was bad? And I was like, they knew. Like,
those movies, they're trying to make them bad, but people think that they're bad. And it does not make it good. They're almost like intentionally trying to make a so bad it's good situation. But like we were talking about earlier, you can't do that on purpose. You cannot go into your production with that as the intention.
Well, that's
because if it doesn't work, you get Batman and Robin, which people fucking hate your movie for 30 years.
I think that's the thing is like Batman and Robin like goes too far in that direction, like you said, where it's like it's too campy. It's not taking anything seriously. And I've watched the movie 2 or 3 times. And I've only gone all the way through once. This is also under the influence as well. Because I'm just like, I can't. This is just bad. But like Batman Forever is like, I think a movie that balances that well.
It's better.
Yeah. And then I think this movie, again, is a good example of, again, balancing it right and well. Because again, I've seen this movie multiple times and every time I'm having so much fun.
But this is the only way you can like properly analyze a film like Street Fighter, a film that does not warrant this level of analysis depth whatsoever. But you got to compare it to other movies of the time.
Yeah.
You got to look at it in the context of like what else was coming out, in the 90s. And listen, the 90s were a weird time. People were trying some shit.
Yeah.
And this is like right on the cusp of like when you're seeing more and more CGI in films too. So it's cool like watching this, like how practical it is. You would imagine that if they did a Street Fighter movie nowadays, they might do like just like a lot of like green screen sets and things like that. It's not going to look as cool. A lot of practical elements of this movie that make it just fun watching it for that reason alone.
Well, another thing that I do, again, unironically like about this movie is the set design is really good.
Looks good, and you can tell sometimes that the budget's a little tight for the set design, but they made it work.
Yeah. Like when you get into like M. Bison's lair, like it looks cool. It looks really like it's a little like Legion of Doom, but like I think in a good way, leaning into like the camp.
Yeah, it's over the top bad guy. I mean, they have this scene where he gives the big briefcase of money to the guy, and he opens it up. It's a bunch of money with his face on it.
And then when it gets paid off at the end of the movie with like the one henchman like taking the briefcase, he's like, "I got the money," and then boop, like it's Monopoly money.
My favorite gag in the movie is when they're trying to crash the truck. And the Russian guy says, "Change the channel," because they're watching it on a TV monitor.
I feel like when I saw this in theaters, that was like the biggest laugh, and then the second biggest one, and then this gets into like the like intentional, unintentional, is there's like when they have the curfew in the country. There's an announcement where it goes like, "Anyone resisting arrest will be shot," and like, which to me is like very like 10-year-olds like playing with his action figures dialogue. It's like like you're gonna get shot for resisting, like the good guys. Like
that's another nitpick I have with the movie is that I think there's too many guns in general for a Street Fighter.
Yeah,
like. Like just you got to do like a Dune thing or something. Make an excuse for them to not have guns or as many guns, because the ending fight sequence of the movie, you want that like hand-to-hand combat element of it, but there's just people like firing off assault rifles everywhere. So that it's a weird juxtaposition.
It's tricky. I think because it's a 90s action movie, like, and it's coming off the heels of all those 80s action movies. Gunplay is such a big part of those things, and that's like with this director in particular and all the stuff he had written before.
Yeah, he loves guns.
He wrote gun movies, yeah. So he didn't really know how to do. Also, again, the stunt choreographer hated his time here. Did not have time to do any of the things he wanted. So.
Do you think this director ever played the game one time?
I think so. I mean, he knew what the costumes looked like. I think the costume designer.
Yeah, I'm sure he saw pictures of what the characters looked like. Well, I don't know if it ever got deeper than that, though.
I'm not sure. I don't know how old this man was when he directed this. I think that would help answer my question. Or if he had children, I don't know.
Well, the thing I was going to say about like the fight choreography and like the action sequences, again, the kind of lacking is that, to Jason's point about like this being like a 90s action movie, is that I love 80s and 90s action movies, but like you're not going to those movies for like fight scenes like hand to hand, because that's just not, I feel like, what American action movies do very well.
I mean, it's possible that we're a little John Wick pilled here, and we have higher expectations for what action movies should be providing us.
Yeah. Well, to me, like a lot of the appeal of those action movies back in the day was like the set pieces. Like,
well, you're watching like big muscly dudes fight each other,
right?
And in this movie, unfortunately, the main antagonist is dying of cancer. So
yeah,
he's not exactly a big muscly guy.
But like with Die Hard, to me, there's not a good fight scene in the movie. Like, and I think it's like maybe the greatest action movie ever made. But I don't think there's a good fight scene in the movie. I think the best action sequences again are like the set pieces, Bruce Willis jumping off the building, the shootouts. I just don't think that's really what, at least at the time, what American action directors did well was in fight sequences, which again I think hampers the movie a little bit because again it's called Street Fighter and there's not any good fight scenes.
It would have been cool to see like more one-on-one things that actually like paid off and felt the punches like you were playing the game.
Like I said, I just give me one wide shot that looks like it's taken straight from the game. That's all I want.
Honestly, yeah.
Well, the other thing I was gonna say is that granted, I don't know how many like stunts were done by like the actual actors and their stunt doubles. Like I'm sure Jean-Claude Van Damme did his kicking. Like,
he did all his own one-liners.
Yeah, but again, like with action sequences, like at the time not being up to snuff. We talked about John Wick. The reason John Wick works is because Keanu Reeves is like doing like all of it.
Yeah, exactly. You can get wide takes and you can get long takes because you're not worrying about swapping him out with a stunt actor between shots.
Yeah. Or it's like when an actor does do their own stunts, but it's like...
It's not good.
It's not good, yeah. Where it's like, okay, we got to shoot around like this person like not knowing what to do. Well, because that's like the difference between like, you know, Asian action films where it's like Jackie Chan. That's Jackie Chan.
It's Jackie Chan in the shot. So you could just like plant the camera down and let Jackie Chan do his thing.
I'm sure they were banking on that by getting Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Instead, he was like, wait, how much cocaine they have inside?
He did not want to do that for this movie.
Is it legal there? You know, like, sign me up.
He's like, wait, I could do cocaine and cheat on my wife? Fuck the movie.
$7 million? Who's playing, you know, Cammy? Like, you know.
He's like, hey, what's that blonde girl doing? Send her to my trailer.
Anyway, Dylan, are you sticking with your overrated argument?
I have no strong opinions here.
Do you think this is properly rated? Or are you giving it the rare properly rated rating?
No, I'll say it's overrated. I gotta be honest, I never thought about this movie much before this week. I'm surprised that it's got like this like cult following to it. But I mean, I'm sure that's like that for a lot of like random fucking 90s movies.
Yeah, that's part of the
especially for people our age, because like those movies came out when we were kids.
That's what this podcast is for, right? It's for like kind of discovering some underrated gems and things like that, and then arguing about them. Shane, you have any final thoughts?
There is like a speech in this movie that like I have memorized. I think it's one of the greatest speeches in cinematic history. And again, it's the one take wonder of Jean-Claude Van Damme. Where after the off-brand UN tells them like we're giving in to Bison's demands because this is the 90s where you can negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, this is before 9/11.
Yeah,
pre 9/11.
Back when terrorists could be fun in movies. Yeah. like so some dweeb from not the UN goes like, listen, Bison guy, we're giving in to the demands. Tell your troops to leave, and we're leaving you of your command. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme goes, you've lost your balls. And then he goes up, and then he goes, troopers, I just received new orders. Bison is getting paid out for his crimes. And our friends will have died here. Will have died for nothing. But we can go home. Meanwhile, ideals like freedom, peace, and justice, they get backed up. But we can go home. Well, I'm not going home. I'm going to get on my boat. I'm going to go up river and I'm going to kick that son of a bitch bison's ass so hard that the next bison wannabe is going to feel it. Now, who wants to go home? And who wants to go with me? And they all cheer. And then, Guile goes and runs off to his boat. And they're all war criminals because it's now an unsanctioned military action. Bison is again, they end up beating Bison, but Guile is 100% answering for his crimes. It's all a happy ending. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, good job defeating that. You're going to jail.
you are being stripped of your command, court-martialed.
There should have been a post-credit scene after that freeze frame where they all just get arrested by the AN.
He's at Congress. They're throwing the book at him. Bill Clinton is like, so what'd you do that for, man? We told him we gave him $1 billion.
I'm the only one here allowed to cheat on my wife.
All right, and on that note, that's going to be it for this one, guys. Let us know in the comments, did we get it right? What are some topics you'd like to see for future episodes? Make sure to leave a like on this episode and consider supporting the show by checking out our Patreon page. Also, check us out on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram.
Oh yeah, we got those TikToks going now.
Yeah,
this is
finally.
power.
Join our Discord. We have fun conversations like this on there. Big thanks to Shane for coming on.
Yeah.
Shane, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Shame Memory. That's shame, then memory.
Yeah, we'll put all the links in the description. If you guys
I'm also on Instagram. I don't really post much on there, but I do post. Unfortunately, I post too much on Twitter.
Yeah, I feel you.
I think that's it. I don't really do TikTok. I'm not.
follow you on Letterboxd.
Yeah, you can follow. I'm also on Letterboxd. I do post a lot there, so you can see some of my hot movie takes on good old Letterboxd.
Yeah, shout out to Letterboxd. So yeah, that's it for this one. We will see you guys at the movies.
See ya.
Bye.
It is hot in here.
Oh man.